university. I wasn't too sure about my degree, but this book kind of put me back on the right track. It made me think about genetics, and it's the reason, almost single-handedly the reason, that I decided to do a master's in what's known as genomic medicine. And from that, I obviously am now doing medicine as a degree. I'm in my third year. It was a catalyst to genuinely the way that I think about science, and in particular genetics. I used to think about it in GCSE and A-level as this kind of diffuse, not necessarily hard to understand. I didn't struggle with the concepts particularly, but maybe I struggled with thinking about it in an abstract way and thinking outside the box. A way that really, when you start thinking about certain subjects in a more worldly way, a sort of outside the box perspective, like I said, you get more out of it. It's more interesting, it's more real, and it resonates more with you. And that is what this book did. It didn't just help me with genetics, it helped me think about science and now medicine in a way that is not just linear. It's a 3D perspective, and it's one that requires abstract thought, and this certainly was one of the books that helped me think in that way. When I was going in to do my my master's in genomic medicine, I reread probably half of this book before moving on to something else, and it made me think what other books there are like this, or at least can help you to think in this way. And that might not be the primary purpose of this book, but it was for me. And there are another 2 or 3 books that I read when I was about 21, 22 years old. One was called The Red Queen, and there's a couple more that I would love to share with you as well. So if you are interested in this type of video, please let me know via a like or a comment or whatever, and I'll make sure to do more videos like this in the future. I think it's best if we read the blurb first, just to get an idea. I do apologise for my poor camera quality. Like I said, if you enjoy this type of video, I'll be happy to make more. Possibly I'll invest in a better camera. So the selfish gene caused a wave of excitement amongst biologists and the general public when it was first published in 1976. Its vivid rendering of a gene's eye view of the world in lucid prose gathered together the strands of thought about the nature of the natural selection into a conceptual framework with far-reaching implications for our understanding of evolution. Time has confirmed its significance. Intellectually rigorous, yet written in non-technical language, The Selfish Gene is widely regarded as a masterpiece of science writing, and its insights remain as relevant today as on the day it was published. I think the sentence, it's a vivid rendering of a gene's eye view of life, could not be more correct. Such is the title of the book, The Selfish Gene. I won't try to distill the entire premise of the book, or at least what it tries to cover, in a couple of sentences myself. I would just implore you to read the book yourself. say it outright, because I don't think he wants to actually stir that debate too directly. But that is the implication of a lot of what this is saying. That but I think actually the main point he's making is that it shouldn't be a debate like that, and I think that's fine. It is true that what this book is considering initially here is that evolution truly, it's not a debate. It isn't a debate, I'm afraid. So it's best for us not to even really consider it like that for this book. But like he said, he's going to be talking about selfishness and altruism, and some of the discussions on altruism in this book are fascinating, really fascinating, and it makes you think about evolution and life in a way that, and by life I mean how life developed, in terms of, we're talking evolution and things like that, in a way that I would never have thought about it if I hadn't read this book. So, carrying on. Apart from its academic interest, the human importance of this subject is obvious. It touches every aspect of our social lives, our loving and hating, fighting and cooperating, giving and stealing, our greed and our generosity. There are claims that could have been made for Lorenz's on aggression or Ardry's, the social contract, and Ibersfeld's love and hate. The trouble with these books is that their authors got it totally and utterly wrong. They got it wrong because they misunderstood how evolution works. They made the erroneous assumption that the important thing in evolution is the good of the species or the group, rather than the good of the genes have survived, in some cases for millions of years, in a highly competitive world. This entitles us to expect certain qualities in our genes. I shall argue that a predominant quality to be expected in a successful gene is ruthless selfishness. This gene selfishness will usually give rise to selfishness in individual behaviour. However, as we shall see, there are special circumstances in because she needs help and I want to help. That is a purely altruistic behaviour. I get nothing out of it. And what this paragraph is just sort of teasing us with the idea of is that even this is not actually and that's why it says in limited forms of altruism, not like literally, sacrificing yourself for someone. That those small acts of altruism, that is still to achieve, a quote unquote selfish genetic goal. And it doesn't say here, but it will go on to talk about how that's how we're perceived in a social environment, that these are actions of someone who is a socially prosperous person, and given that humans are social beings, acting in that way is actually incredibly valuable to your own prosperity in life, and eventually your own ability to reproduce. That is a quality in people that people like. I would want to be with someone who behaves in that way, just as other people would want to see in their potential mates that type of behaviour. It is desirable. So this is just that is one very, very specific point about this. It goes into many, many, many other discussion points about limited forms of altruism as essentially selfish acts, and that doesn't mean we need to think of them as any less altruistic or useful to our society. There's still, I'm not going to see someone crossing the road helping an old lady and think, oh well, you're only doing that for your own genetic prosperity. It's just interesting to think about and how that has developed in our society evolutionarily. But guys, I think that is a pretty good point to stop on. I hope I don't get copy striked for this. I think I've done enough discussion and chat about different aspects of the book and the 6 or 7 paragraphs that we've covered. Please read this book if you're interested in the subjects that we've talked about so far. That was only the first 8 or 9 paragraphs, and it's already given me the itch to keep reading this thing up. I think I'm going to give it another read.